I just wanted to give a little bit of context or background on, well, I was writing two collections of poetry, one a collection of family fatherhood poems and one a collection of kind of spiritual meditation poems. And Jennifer, my wife, had the idea, why don't you combine those two? And so that's what I did. So most of my good ideas come from her. Like that one. So anyway, but just as a little bit of background, because I have a kind of eclectic spirituality in my life, and I was raised Catholic. I had 11 years of Catholic education, and then in high school I abandoned the Catholic Church for the Church of LSD, psilocybin, and stuff like that. And so after high school, in college, I discovered yoga and meditation and became a really devout yogi, and almost became a yogic monk, and went to India. Almost went to India and became a yogic monk, but at the last minute I decided I couldn't do it, and I went through a kind of spiritual crisis, and then I became a kind of atheistical Buddhist. And then after about 10 years, I became a kind of theistic Buddhist, and then I came back to kind of being a yogi. So that's where I am now. So I have a few epigraphs at the beginning of the book. The first one is from the Tao Te Ching. It says, something mysteriously formed before heaven and earth in the silence and void, standing alone and unchanging, ever present and in motion. Perhaps it is the mother of 10,000 things. And so the spiritual poems in this book are written to the mother of 10,000 things, the Divine Mother. So I'm going to read a few family poems and then a few spiritual poems. I think I have 20 minutes. So I'm going to start with this poem called The Middle Way. You know, the middle way is what the Buddha discovered and taught, is kind of like the middle way between asceticism, practicing austerities to get enlightenment, and a life of indulgence. So it's called The Middle Way. I wrote this poem for Jennifer, my wife and partner, and I have several poems in here for Jennifer. She doesn't like this one, but it's the one that other people seem to like more. So anyway, I'm going to read it. Jennifer hopefully won't be too upset. It's actually about, my life right before I got to Jennifer and things got better. So anyway, the book has to start with trouble, I guess, so I'm going to start with some trouble. The Middle Way for Jennifer. I was entering the middle of the end of a divorce from a woman who'd appeared like the sun and the moon to me, and who, incredulous, was herself in the middle of an affair with a woman, and when confronted, locked herself in the bathroom and cut at her wrists. I was exploiting a post-separation rebound affair with a tall blonde German in black leather whom I goaded into hurting me for all that I had done and not done. I was in the middle of a 5-year game of Hold'em, low hole wild, stud, and fuck your buddy, Joneses of triumph and rage, proxy catharses for the real crap I was in. I was stitching together a book out of elder, mullein, and pokeweed, putting away icons of Jesus, Mary, Shiva, Saraswati, converting to a bad Buddhism, burning court briefs in the pit behind the house. I was in the middle of therapy. It was June in the house of my vacationing Calvinist professor. On the 4th floor of her Tudor mansion, gabled like an attic, though an attic covered above, I climbed into her clawfoot tub, and in hot water beside a wall of 100 tiny window panes cascading down to the porcelain, I gazed out through handkerchief-waving poplars to an Ann Arbor street. And somewhere in the middle of Tropic of Cancer and the life of Teresa, I picked up the phone and the nerve and called and asked you to canoe with me down the Huron River, where around a willowy bend I promised a great blue heron would lift itself impossibly off the water. Not knowing that out of the mud and muck in the middle of things, something was unfolding, being born, that we would marry and raise sons in the West. Sunlight cut through maples and oaks, dazzled water that cradled me, and you said yes, and I lay my head back on the marble, knowing I'd just been made king in a house and a story I did not own. This next one is, I wrote for my son Aiden, I apologize if some of you have heard a couple of these poems before, but anyway, it's always good to hear poems more than once. This is called Aiden Looks at the Moon. This is the first poem I wrote in this book quite a while ago. This is when Aiden, who's 8 years old now, he was 5 months. After the bugling of elk, dinner by the wood stove, we turned in, slept till midnight, and then you woke crying, inconsolable. I carried you out of the cabin, across the porch, where September poured over us with fragrance of sage, and you were hushed. In the moon lacquered dark, aspens quaked with owls, and I looked at you, awake in my arms, 5 months old, eyes like pearls, staring at the moon, that lantern lighting this field and continent. Your first time to look at the famous orb that lit the plains of Troy, the face implored by Sappho and Sidney, that Li Po leapt for, drunk and drowning. Crone of Whitman, Hecate to Plath, O Ariel, O huntress, light this boy's nights when he hikes these mountains or comes home late from cards or loving. Illuminate his honeymoon and housewarming. And when he grows past all my wanderings, soften his sleepless nights as you have mine when I walk the house in the dark and find you in a window, reminding me again that beyond whatever carapace of longing or fear I've wrapped around myself, something calls to me from a home where the elk steps in the river. The next one is for my other son named Kellen. After I put this book together and went back and looked at it, I realized there were a whole bunch of poems about my sons, really about like what I did when I got woken up in the middle of the night by them. And so there are several poems like that in this book. This is another one. This is called Kellen in My Lap, 5 months old. In a circle of lamplight, I read again Suzukis N Mine, Beginner's Mind. You play my fingers like piano keys, arranging and rearranging them, finding new patterns, melodies. When you woke in the 3 o'clock dark, we moved out here to a room where you could play and I could work. What is Satori? Suzuki asks. The bottom of a pail broken through. Coyote, mountain lion stalk the hills above our house. Darkness holds its wing above the valley. Orion brightens January's snow, and down in the far fields flickers a single yellow window pane. The delight you find in my fingers, a monk has no words to name. So I have all these kind of awestruck homages to my sons, and excuse me, but just to give a sense that, you know, fatherhood and family life ain't all that great all the time, I wrote a couple other poems about the difficulties, and this one is called Checking Out. Checking Out. Kafkaesque, sorry. Start again. Kafkaesque, I walked through my house, my marriage, past ungrateful sons, fraying my wit's last rope ends, holding me tenuously to cliffs of rage. Exhausted, sleepless, sick of boys fighting over toys that, like boys themselves, won't shut up. Push my button, pull my string. I'll never be your friend. Fine, take everything, take it all. I hate you to the ends of the universe. I sank into the ancient vile well of hatred of my life, myself, my chances, until I'd had enough and just checked out. Said goodbye to all that. Not by the usual means, the .38 my mother's father used when I was 4, or the Macho Rider's double-barrel Bonanza, not by truck fumes, Plath gas, cyanide, Cicero bath, Nick Noose, frozen Mississippi River bridge jump, ex-wife's razors, or the rock star's autoerotic get-off. No, not with the Remington my neighbor used up in the hills, a father who left his son in his pickup while he scouted hunting spots in the Wellsvilles, the 2-year-old getting out, wandering off, days later found frozen, the father sentenced and doing it in the slender days before incarceration. And I didn't go out for milk. The trick of my parents' neighbor who gunned his pickup, his hot new Starling perched beside him on the seat, wheels turned like a rifle toward Las Vegas. True, one time in a dead-end marriage, I rolled my station wagon across I-40, Stravinsky blaring, sparks streaming from the roof, splinters of glass swirling like a firebird before my face, when out of nowhere came a question, "Are you ready?" Not yet. Still nothing changed much until I learned one more thing. Who can say how it happened? I saw the way out the indoor. I became myself, the car I totaled, the bullet chasing stars, flames wreathing the body, the bridge I leapt from, Mississippi water filling the lungs. Somebody helped, it's true, as I stepped out into the sky, shouting at God that he was nothing but an empty cipher for something a billion suns brighter. Tatouam asi, which we are.